Samantha from Jessimo Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you my coral cane bracelet. So this isn't the exact bracelet that we're going to make, but this is basically what we're going to make today. So we're going to make the two canes that we need. So we need this cane, and we actually need a bunch of other canes to go around this. So it's 3 different canes, and that's what we're going to do. And the shape of the bracelet is actually going to be more this shape over here. So that's what we're going to do. So I've already prepared a few things. You are going to need 2 skinner blends, and the first one is a skinner blend between the colour recipe I gave you. This is the 4-pot green to 1-pot black recipe. And this is Kato, and the Kato turquoise and the Kato white, and it's just a skinner blend between those 3, and then I've condensed it into this block. And then I've done the same for another one, and this is a skinner blend between Kato white, Kato yellow and Kato brown, and then I've also wrapped it with a sheet of black Kato, which is what we're going to be doing. And this was basically the exact same as this before I wrapped it. So now we're going to wrap this one, and you want to work with a lot of clay. So I've got about 1.5 blocks here for each skinner blend. So it is very important that you work with as much clay as you can, because it just makes the overall process a lot easier. Before, when I first did this cane, I worked with a lot less clay, and I found it to be much harder. So we're going to be working with a lot more clay today. So I'll just take this black, and this black was run through on the thickest setting of my pasta machine. And just gonna trim up this side first. And then we'll roll it back around. Then we'll bring this up. Okay, and then we'll just trim off this excess. This Kato's a little bit sticky today because it's quite hot. This is the one time when you wish you had an air condition room. There we are. So then I'll just smush all of that together, make sure it's all put together, and then I'll just trim off these sides. And keep these little scrap pieces where you can always do something with those. And there we are. So I'll just get out any air bubbles. Now what you need to do is a reducing process. And this can take a while, especially with this amount of clay. But you basically need to reduce it down until it's about that big. So if you can see here, we have many little pieces over here. So we need to be able to cut out about 50 out of this. And this is why I'm saying that we need to start with a much larger amount of clay than you usually would for a cane, since this is a fairly complex cane. So I'll probably spend around 10 to 15 minutes reducing this down into a piece that we can cut 15 pieces out of. And basically a way you reduce it is you would reduce it with your roller by just rolling along the top, and then you would also just use your fingers as well to smush it in, because you don't want it to become a strip. You want to keep it as a lump. And if you come across air bubbles, and I can see there's an air bubble right here, just take your knife, slit it and smooth it out. And now you'll do this for both canes. You want them to be reduced to around about the same size. You want to be able to reduce them so that you can get 50 pieces out of them. And so I'll come back when these are reduced. Okay, so I've finished reducing one of the pieces. So here's the beginning part, and now I'm just going to take it all the way along so you can see that it's quite big. Now we actually want to put it through the pasta machine on the thickest setting and lengthen it some more. So I'll just do that off camera quickly. Okay, and so I've done that. So now I'll show you how big it is. So this is the starting point. Now I'm going to go all the way along. long, so it's about 2 meters actually, so it's a nice long piece, and that's the same for the other one, so we'll be able to cut out plenty of pieces from those. So this is going to be a little hard to show on camera, so I apologize if it's not completely clear, but what I'm going to do, and I have to do this off camera, is I'm just taking the piece that I just showed you and I am folding it in half like this, and this will make it easier for me to trim it. Okay, and this is okay because the pieces are going to go together, so it'll be okay to fold it in half. So I'm going to start on this end, and I need to trim off this end piece, so that's what it looks like. And now we're going to cut out pieces. So I'm not sticking them onto each other very firmly, and I'm actually going to, as I cut these out, I'm going to unstick them because I do want to try and keep them separate. But if you can't separate them, like this one, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to separate. Don't worry about it. Just use it to make sure that you cut out all of your pieces and try to separate them if you can. And just carry on up the length of your cane until you're finished, basically. And you should end up with plenty of pieces to work with. Okay, so I've finished up chopping all the pieces up, and now I've taken them off over here so that it's out of the camera's range, but I've got quite a few pieces. So now we can actually concentrate on creating our cane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over a sausage of black, and this is black Kato again. I always like to use Kato in my cane projects if I can, and today it's all Kato because it's pretty hot out today, and so you want your clay to stay nice and firm, and Primo would actually be quite a nightmare right now. So anyway, I've got this little snake of clay, and that is going to be the middle of our cane. And now we want the white to be the center. And that's important to remember, so I'm just popping this on. And now this bit's a little tricky. I've had a little bit of trouble with this before, because you can't attach these pieces together yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get into almost a petal formation. So this can take a little bit of fussing to get right. So basically you just want to stick these all together around this. And now these are a little bit long, so later on we're going to have to push them together to get them to form a round shape. So this half I'm going to leave as it is, and now I'm going to start another piece on this side, and you'll see what I mean in just a minute. And this is why I want to have a lot of pieces. And actually I'm going to take this out for the moment, it will make my life easier. Just put all these pieces together. And don't worry if it appears untidy, that's actually a good thing, because if I bring this over, you can see that all of these aren't straight, they're all kind of wiggling all over the place, which creates a nice natural effect. So don't worry about getting your lines straight or anything like that. And so if some of them are longer or some of them are shorter, don't worry about that either. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to create two pieces like this and use up all of my strips, and then we'll mold those two halves into semicircles, and then we'll put that around a black centerpiece. And I think that will probably be the easiest way to do this, since this is probably the hardest part of the project. So I'll just carry on doing this until I've used up all of my strips. Okay, so I finished this up. So we've got two pieces here, and I did the same for the other one, so you can see that we have two pieces there. So now what we want to do is we want to slowly manipulate this into kind of a half circle shape. We're going to flatten out the top and start pushing it down. Just like this. And so you're going to get a bit of distortion, but that's pretty good because you do want it to look like that. It looks quite cool afterwards. We might not even need that black center. Okay, I'm trying to get into a half circle, so there we are. Got it in about a half shape. So now I'm just busy getting all flat and neat. And now I'll do the same for this one. What we do is we start pinching towards the middle. We also want to flatten out the top and just pinch inwards. And flatten out the top. So this bit is the most tricky part, getting this part correct. But because you're not worrying too much about distortion, it's actually not too bad. If you were worrying about distortion, then yeah, it would be a lot trickier. There we are. Almost got that. And we have about a half and a half each. So this one's a little big. And I'll do the exact same for the blue and green one. Okay. Now what I want to do is I just want to bring my finger and make a little divot here, because I do want to put in that black center. So make just a little hole there, which will help us put in that black center. And I'll bring over a piece and just get that into the right size. There we are. And I'll just pop that in the middle there. I'll pop this side in, and basically we'll just squish this together, and that black will sit in there quite happily. And there we are, that's basically it. So now I'm just going to squish this flat, and then I'm going to start reducing. Now you also don't have to worry too much about distortion in reducing. You want to try and avoid it, of course, but again, you don't have to worry too much about it. So this is a good cane to start with if you're not perfect with your reducing. I'm trying to avoid distortion, but the white over here is moving faster than the brown on the outside, because the brown's a little bit older, so this part's a little bit hard. Once you get started, it's a lot easier. So you can see that we've reduced it quite a bit already. And now what we're going to do is, as soon as I've got it to a place where I'm fairly happy with it, I want to put a strip of black around here. I'm just pushing that middle back in. Okay, and then I'll bring over that strip of black, and this was rolled out on the second thinnest setting of my pasta machine. This is quite thin. And I'm just going to wrap this around. And tear it off. You can see that I'm not being precise here at all. This cane you don't have to be precise with. If you're doing something like in my cherry blossom tutorial, you need to be as precise as possible because you want to end up with an exact image at the end. But with this cane, it's actually beneficial not to be too precise because it gives it a more organic look, which is what you're going for. So that's what this looks like, and then you just reduce it by squeezing it like you normally do. And just reduce it down. And then this one over here, I'm going to turn into the exact same thing, and then I'm going to show you what we're going to do around the edge over here. Okay, so here's this one now that I have done the exact same thing that I did with this one. But now we want to put some edging around it. So I've got these bullseye canes. And it's just a simple bullseye cane. I'll provide a link to a bullseye cane. And actually, I forgot to mention previously in the tutorial that I'll provide a link to a Skinner blend tutorial as well. And all we're going to do is we're just going to outline this with bullseye cane. So we want about a layer of 3 bullseye canes on top of each other. Now, these bullseye canes don't have to all be the same size. They just have to cover the same width. And then we'll have about 3 of them on top of each other all the way around the cane, as you can see over here. So I might need to make some more bullseye canes actually. But basically I'll do that, and then I'll reduce it like the other one, and then we can actually start creating our sheet. Okay, so I have reduced the canes. So here's the end pieces of the green and blue one, and you can see it, those look quite cool. Now they're quite big end pieces, but for the amount of cane that we got, they're actually not that much. And remember to save these because these always look great. So I might end up doing a bonus tutorial showing how to use these. I might not, we'll have to see at the end, but I might show you guys how to use those. And then this is the waste from the brown and yellow one. And you can see it, there's not much there. So I've reduced the blue one down into 3 sizes of canes because we're going to make one larger cane. And I did the exact same for this one. So we'll start with the blue one. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut it into fairly large sections. So I'm just going to cut off that end, and I'm going to cut it into pieces this large. Because I just find that it's a lot easier to get a nice look when I have a large slab, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute. Okay, and so these ones over here that I have are going to have to be reduced down to the same size. And also because I'm not sure what you are going to be doing when you are making this tutorial, but if it is hot and your clay is sticky, make sure to separate everything because you don't want them sticking together. Okay, so we've got a bunch of canes here, which is excellent. Now these ones have to be reduced down a little bit to get them to the same size as these ones. There we are. I'll do the same for this one. And because it's nice and warm and I've been working with these all day, they're pretty easy to reduce, as you can see. So I'm just going to reduce this one too. And remember, you can do this project in different colours. You do not have to do it in the same colours I'm doing. You might want to try purple. Black and white could look fairly interesting. Just experiment around and see what you can come up with. Okay, so there we go. We have all of our canes. Now, I'm just going to kind of piece them together in a random format. I'm not really going to use anything exact. And I don't plan to reduce this at all really, so I'm not worried about getting it into an exact shape. So I'll just kind of piece it together. Want that there. And we'll have another one of these, actually, like that there. I'll split this a little bit and put in another one of these. Like that, and then we'll put that one in there. And now these are a little bit round for my liking, so when we reduce this just slightly, just to get all the pieces together, we're going to distort these shapes a little bit. So if you like them in a round shape, which you might, just make sure that you don't do what I'm doing now. So you'd probably want to just cut them as slices, but right now I want to kind of get these shapes a little bit more uneven, because we're trying to somewhat imitate coral polyps, and they're a little bit more irregular. So I'm just pressing this all together because I want to get rid of any air bubbles in here. So I'm not trying to reduce it at the moment, I'm just trying to get it to smush together. And we're going to do the exact same for the brown one, but it's going to look a little different. So I'm reducing it a little bit, but I just want to get all of these pieces nicely stuck together. So I'm not trying to get into any particular shape, just reducing it a little bit and getting them all stuck together, just like that. So I'll just put that aside and I'll do the same for the brown one. Okay, so here are our canes. I've squared them up just a bit so they're going to fit together a little bit better, but basically they've just been squished together. So I'm going to put those over to rest for just a second, and I just want to show you the reason I wanted to put all the pieces together instead of just slice them up individually. So if you can see, look closely here, you can see that there's a lot of overlap over here, and so I think it makes it look a little bit more, it looks less natural. It works nicely for things like cherry blossoms and some of my other projects, but I just don't think it works very well for this coral polyp project. So over here you can see there's a bit of overlap over there, but I think it looks better when they're all together, so that is why I've put them into these canes. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to chop off this end piece over here, and so you can see what it looks like somewhat over there. And I'm also just going to chop off this end piece as well. And keep these, they're very valuable actually, because for leftover tutorials and leftover projects they work really well. So make sure to keep all of your leftovers from these sorts of cane projects. I mean, that could be flattened out and used as a bead as it is. Sorry if I was out the camera there. There we are. You can see if you just flatten that out, it will look great. But there we are, that's basically what it looks like so far. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to bring over a piece of black clay, which I've rolled out on the thickest setting of my pasta machine, and we're going to start making our bracelet. So I'll just pop that over there, and then I'm going to start taking cane slices and try to keep them thin, because this sort of a cane you want to last for a while. So I'm just slicing out a few pieces because we don't actually need that much. So I'll just slice out 2 for the moment, and then I'll slice out a few of these. So you can see that I'm trying to keep my slices as thin as possible. Okay, and I think I'll slice out 1 more. Okay. I'll just put that off to the side. Now I'll bring this over, and I'm going to start with this, and I'm just gently going to lay it down and flatten it out. Then we'll bring over this one, place that over there, and then the next one, and so on up. And then we'll see if this is long enough for our bracelet. I suspect it is. Now you can use these canes for all sorts of things. We're going to be using it for a bracelet today, but you could use it for things like collar necklaces, pendants. You could maybe use it as a paperweight, all sorts of things. So play around with it. These canes will keep forever, just so long as you've got them into a place where you're happy to not reduce them or anything. So I would just use these straight as they were. So pop them in a compatible plastic bag and they will keep forever. I mean, you can do dozens of projects with this. Okay, and this should be long enough for a bracelet. I'll double check in a second as soon as I flatten them out. I'm just flattening this out. Like this, and I'll flatten it out properly once I've checked my bracelet blank. And any bracelet blank will work. I'm using one from Linda's Art Spot at the moment. Yeah, this will be plenty long enough actually, more than enough. Okay, so we'll use that. I'm just going to trim up quickly because some of these edges are a little unneat and so I don't need those confusing me. And we can also get rid of a lot of this black stuff over here, because we don't really need that there either. I'll just put those off to the side. And there we are. It's looking great already. I mean, this would be nice enough to actually put up as a wall hanging possibly, if you did it right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flatten it out a little bit more. I want to put this through on the thickest setting of my pasta machine, but I don't want to distort the pattern too much, so I like to do a lot of it by hand first, and then I take it over to my pasta machine. So there we are. Now I'll just pick that up carefully. I'll take it over to my pasta machine, and this is the thickest setting, and I'll just take it there. And it's just to make sure that it's nice and even. Like that. So it looks great so far. Now I'll bring over our cuff and I'll gently drape this over, and I'm just going to do one side so far. So I'm not sure if you can see in there. Here, let me tip this up a little bit. So it's finished over here, so I'm just going to trim that up quickly. Then pick it up and remove it, because I can use that for a pendant if I wanted to. And I'll do the same on the other side. And again, I can use that for a pendant later on if I wanted to. So now what I'm going to do, now that I know how long it is, I'm not happy with how thick this is. I want it twice my thickest setting, but I don't want to waste clay. So I'm now going to bring over some more black clay. So here's a piece of black that I just rolled out on the thickest setting of my pasta machine. And I'll just take this and flip it over. And we'll just place this over the top and just smooth it to make sure you get rid of all the air bubbles, if there are any. And that will be good because we want to make it fairly thick at the moment. And I'll just trim this up. Because you want to save all of this black if you can. Okay, and now we can move on to actually putting it onto the bracelet blank. So I'll just start on this end. And we're slowly gonna wrap it around. Just like that. It's gonna make a lovely bangle. And now I'm just gonna push the bangle in. So I'm just gonna, don't worry about fingerprints at this point in time. Those are easily fixed later. Okay. I'm just gently going to start folding this over. So I'm just going to rest it down here. I'm going to gently start folding this over, which will make the next part easier. And you want to do this sort of thing while the clay's fresh. So things like pendants, you don't have to worry too much about cracking because you're not manipulating the clay this much. But if you were to leave these canes for, let's say, a week or so, or possibly even a few months, you'd find that they probably are too stiff to do this. See, it's even cracking over here, and we've been working with it all day. So you need to, if you're going to make bangles, you want to try and do them before you let the canes sit for too long. So here's what it looks like so far. It's a really nice bangle, I think. Sorry, I'm tooting my own horn. Okay, and so now I need to gently trim away this top edge. Just like that. And keep that because you can use that in scraps as well. There's always a way to use the scraps. Then flip on the other side. And do the same thing. And I like to rotate the bangle so that I get a nice long piece that I can use later. Okay, and then all this stuff actually can only come out once I have trimmed down this side. So trim up inside there we are, that's the one. And we will trim up over there too. Okay. Now we just got to gently pick this out and separate those and place them over to the side. You can use those. With canes like these where they're a little bit more complex, the leftovers actually produce really nice projects, so keep everything and don't throw anything away. And now what I'm doing is I'm just gently rounding off these corners because I don't want my bracelet to have sharp corners, I want it to have rounded corners. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just gently going to start folding over the edge. Very, very gently. Because I don't want it to, it looks very clean cut at the moment. I want it to have more of a beveled edge because it just creates a better feel to the bracelet, I think. So what I'm doing is I'm just pinching the ends over here. And I'm not pinching too hard because you don't want to be having clay spilling out all over the place. You want to have this nice and controlled. So I'm just going back around to do it again. Yeah, there we are. And then I'm just going to go with my finger and fold it over. Just like that. So you can see this side versus this side, I prefer this side. So you could stop when your bracelet has this nice clean edge over here. That's similar to what this one is. It has a very sharp finish on the edge over here. But what I'm doing over here with the beveling creates more of this sort of a look where you have kind of almost a gentle cabochon look, which is what I'm going for. So I'll do the exact same on the other side. And just take your time. The longer you take, the better it will look. This isn't the sort of thing that you want to do in a hurry. So I'll just continue doing this. Okay, so that's what I've done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go along the inside of the bangle and I'm going to slice away the excess. So I'm not sure if that's very clear for you to see, and I'm sorry if it's not. But I'm pretty sure you get what I'm going for. So inside, slice that away. And this is the nice thing about having a metal blank. I do want to expand into not having to use blanks, but at the moment that's as far as I've got. I'm quite happy with how the metal blanks are going because they're pretty easy to use and they're great for a start. But I do want to start working with more interesting techniques for bracelets, having them kind of concave and maybe a different shape. So you might see some of those in the future. But there we are. And I'll go along the inside here, and this could be a little difficult actually, so I might see if I can find my craft knife. Here we are. And I'll see if I can trim up the inside there. There we are. That was better. It's a little bit in a little bit of a tricky spot. So I'm just trying to get a nice clean edge over here, which means that I don't have to worry about sanding too much later on. Because who likes sanding? It's painful. Necessary, but painful. So if you can avoid having to spend hours sanding something, definitely do that. There we go. Okay, so that's much better. I'm just gently going to go around the sides and make sure that I got a nice clean cut. And so you can see that we have a nice edge over here. And then the backing will be black. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside the bracelet with my hands like this so that I stabilize it. And then I'm going to go with the palm of my hand and I'm actually going to smooth off the bracelet. Get rid of any fingerprints that might be there or pits and things like that. So I find that stabilizing in my hands like this means that I don't have to touch it, which means that there's no problem of dings and things like that. Even if I did wear gloves, there'd probably be places where you could see that I was using my hands to hold it. This way, by me touching it inside the metal, there's no risk of me distorting the bracelet. So I'm just gently smoothing. Now you don't want to be too aggressive with your smoothing because otherwise you're going to get smudges. Just gently smooth it and see if you can get rid of air bubbles. And tilting it a bit in the light helps expose those fingerprints. Sorry, I said air bubbles just a second ago. I meant fingerprints. And you want to get rid of any areas where you might have a crack or maybe a ding or any fingerprints. This is very important. It will save you so much time later on, so be sure to spend enough time doing this. And don't forget these ends as well. Always finish those off. This is looking really nice so far. I'm so happy with how it's turned out. Now I'm just going to finish off these edges because they also will have fingerprints on them to a certain degree. So I just will gently place this down. And I'm just going to smooth off these edges so they're nice and clean and they don't have fingerprints and so on. I think I sound like a broken record. Now I'm gently going to pick it up, don't want to mess up anything, and I'll smooth around the other side. And then this is going to get baked for a full hour at Kato's recommended temperature, because you want this to be nice and strong. Now, just a thing to mention, because bangles are a little bit tricky when it comes to baking because they're so big and they really need to be very strong. Put a test chip of Kato into the oven with you. So just cut out a piece of clay, that's Kato, and pop that into the oven with your bangle, and it needs to be a fairly large chip, about that big. Pop it into the oven, bake it like you normally would, and then when it's finished baking, take out the chip, cool it by putting it in some cool water, and then see if you can break it. If it doesn't, then your bracelet's cooked well. If it does break, put half of that back in the oven, maybe increase the temperature just a tad, and bake again, and repeat the process until you can't break the chip anymore. And that way you won't have to test your bracelet for strength so that you don't risk breaking it, because we went through a lot of work to get to where we are, so it'd be a shame to break it straight after it came out of the oven. So anyway, this is going to go into the oven now for a full hour, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Okay, so it is out of the oven and it will have darkened just a little bit, but basically it looks almost the exact same. Kato has very little colour change when it's baked. So now we want to move on to sanding it, and we just want to sand it now while it's on the blank because it gives it a bit more stability, and so it's easier to sand. So I'll start with the 400 grit sanding paper, and this is a sanding paper that I got from Finalizing Gems, and basically I'll just sand it from the lowest grit, which is this one, all the way up to the highest, which is a 4000, and just get rid of all of those marks and things that make it look unattractive. And then we'll take it off the blank and I'll show you how to apply the back. Okay, so it's been sanded and buffed. I'm really happy with how it looks, and I did buff it with my Dremel, but basically I've gone through the process of all the bracelets that I've made, except that this is the only one that I've made with Kato, and so I think that the Kato actually buffs up better than the Primer. I'm going to do some more testing on this because wow, I'm really happy with how shiny this is. I mean, there's no Renaissance wax or anything on here, so super happy with that. And you don't have to go this far with the sanding because you only actually have to go up to like a 1000 grit just to get rid of all of those kinks and things. But I like to go all the way just to see what it's going to look like, so I don't mind spending a little bit of extra time to see what it's going to look like. So I've taken that off, and it's pretty strong actually. It's not as flexible as the Primo. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim the inside over here. And I'm just going to bring over my craft knife to do that. And I'm gently going to trim along the inside. Now you want to be careful because you don't want to cut into the actual bracelet itself and create a kink. You just want to trim along the outside to get rid of this rough edge. So just take your craft knife. You could even use your tissue blade, though I find that I have more control when I'm using the craft knife. And just trim up that edge, and that will make it a lot neater and easier to use as well. And so I'll spend a little bit of time doing this because I want to make sure that I get this right before I put on the black backing. Okay, so it's been tidied up now. So it's nice and smooth along all of the edges. So I trimmed up here, here, and on both of these sides. So now we're ready to apply the backing. So I've just got a sheet of black Kato, and this was rolled out on the thickest setting of my pasta machine. And I'm just gonna roll it in. Actually, just want to trim this because it's a little too long. And just trim it up over there. And trim it up over there. And it is way too broad as well, so the more you trim it up the easier it's to work with, so I keep forgetting to do that. But anyway, so I'll set it up like this, and then we'll hopefully be able to feed this in through here. Oops, there we go. And just separate these two. This bit's always a little fiddly. And then we'll smooth it along the bottom. I'm just gonna get this like this, and we'll put it along the inside of the bracelet like that. And now before you do anything else, make sure you squish it up against the side nice and tight to get rid of air bubbles and just to get it to stick in general. And then just like before, we're going to kind of act like this is the bracelet blank, and we're going to fold the clay over it. And now don't press too hard because you don't want it to stick too badly. We're just going to fold it over like this. Easy peasy. And just watch out for cracks. If you see any cracks, go and fix those. So you might see a little bit of cracks along the edge. So before you trim, just make sure to fix those up. It's easier to fix them up now. And just fix any cracks that you see. and I'm fixing any problems I see in the middle too. And we'll fix this side as well. Just take the side of my finger and kind of smooth these things out. There we are. Okay, so now we're ready to trim. Bring over my blade. Very gently, you have to be careful now because you can kink into your bracelet. And I've done that way too many times. You don't want to do that. There we go. And it's better to go shallow in the beginning, so I need to go along here and clean it up just a little. We'll do the exact same on the other side as well. So I'm just being careful not to kink it because I really don't want to do that. I'm watching my fingers when I do that. And I'll just bring up this clay. You can also just bundle it into a ball and then smear it along the side over here, and it helps pick up anything else. Just a little bit. And also you can use your blade to clean it up because we have a little bit of clay sticking over here. So I like to use my blade to just clean it up. And this is another reason why I like to sand it, because if you sanded it, you've got rid of all the pits and things, so this stuff doesn't get stuck as badly as it would if you hadn't sanded it. So it is another important reason to sand before you apply the backing. Now we'll tidy that up a little bit more in a little while. For now, we want to do the same on the other side. Okay, so I've trimmed up both sides. And it's looking okay at the moment, but I want to do the same as what I did on the other side, basically. I want to do the same thing that I did for the top as I will for the bottom. Sorry, my tongue got twisted there. I basically want to give it a little bit of a bevel. So if you look at this side, and what I've done is I've kind of broken up that harsh, straight-edged sort of look. And you can keep that look. It's definitely a different style. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I prefer it when it looks nice and smooth and rounded. So that side versus that side. I personally prefer that side. I feel like it's a little bit more neat. And so now I'll do the same for all of the edges, where I just basically go and pinch it up against the edges, just smoothing out any edges. And this also means that it will stick to the side a bit better as well. Just like that. And now I'm going to clean up in just a minute, but for now we're just trying to get that basic look first before we clean up. Just smooth along the sides and get rid of all these little bits. You don't want those sticking on in the wrong places because they can be a big problem. Just smush it on. Okay. And then I'll bring over some stuff to help us. So I've just got a wet wipe over here. And it's quite wet, and I'm just going to use it along these edges to kind of smooth away any real big issues, and then I'll go back and smooth out those edges. So we'll use it for that last little bit, and it must be wet. If it's not wet enough, spray a little bit of water on it, which I did, because it needs to be quite wet to do this. Okay, and then I'm going to spray both of my hands. And that will just help me finish this up. So I want it to have a nice clean edge. So I'm just going to kind of mess with it a little bit. You'll get a feel for this as you go. There's no really specific formula when coming to finish this. It's going to be different each time, so you'll just get a feel for what you need to do as you're doing it. So I know that to smooth this off nicely I need to just spray my fingers and work it in. So I'll spray them again. The nice thing about this is it reduces the drag, and it also seems to prevent fingerprints, and it actually does more to get rid of fingerprints than anything else. So I'll just continue to do this on both sides, just like this. And then we will also have to do the sides over here, because we don't want to leave those out. Okay, and then I'm going to hold on to the outside in a minute. I'm just going to quickly spray my fingers again. And I'm actually just going to hold the outside of the bracelet, and I'm going to go with my finger and I'm going to smooth the inside with the water. And this will help it get rid of fingerprints and things like that. And the water just helps reduce drag. Okay. Now I'll just check the outside here again. Got a little bit of a fingerprint there. And we got some around here that I just want to get rid of. And I'll just wipe that up. Okay, and then that needs to dry a little bit. And then I might bring some liquid clay around here just to fill in the seam a little. And I'm just going to be bringing over some Kato translucent liquid clay. I'm just going to pop a little bit on my finger. Just dab it around here. And then I'm going to smooth it around the outside. And this will just close off any gaps that I might have missed, and it also helps smooth it out a little bit. And I always use the translucent version, it works much better. Now this is also optional, you don't have to do it, it's just an extra measure. And I'm just going to clean off my hands every now and then, because I don't want a lot of liquid clay on here, I just want enough that it will fill in that seam there. Because I don't really want to do a smear, but I do want to not have any cracks or anything. So I've just used the liquid clay there to fill in that seam. And then don't forget to smooth in the inside where you might have that seam where the liquid clay was. And then I'll do that on the other side. Okay, and so that's it for now. I'm now going to pop this in the oven for another full hour at Kato's recommended temperature, and then I'll take it out and I'll show you how to finish it off. To finish it off, we're going to have to sand inside here, and we're going to have to give this a little bit of a re-sand, and we're also going to have to sand these edges. But overall I'm pretty happy with it so far, so I'll go put this in the oven and I'll see you when it's baked. Okay, so this is the out of the oven, and it's looking pretty good. It's quite strong. So you can see it's a lot less flexible compared to Primer. But I've decided that I do want to do a little bit of a smear along here because we've got just a little bit of a ridge. So I'm going to bring over some Kato Black to do that. And you want to just warm this up in your hands because it's got to be quite soft. So just grab that, smush it in your hands, and just roll it into a ball, and then roll that into a log. And we don't actually need such a long log. Okay, and you'll just place it on the end and gently smear along. And then just take your finger and smear it along so that it blends in. You don't want any more ridges. So you just basically want to fill it in. So this takes a little bit of patience, so I've got a little bit of a ridge still over there. So I'll fill that in and I'll smooth. And I'm just busy filling it in, so it's not looking tidy at the moment. But what I'll do later is I'll go and bring over a wet wipe, and I'll use the wet wipe to just smooth it out a bit. But basically you want to get rid of any ridges, so just fill in any gaps. So it's going to look basically the same as it does now, but you don't want to be able to feel that ridge. So just go and smear that along, and just remove any excess clay, because you don't actually need a lot of clay, you just want it there to fill in that ridge. So I'll do that. Okay, so I finished off this edge and I've smoothed it off and I'm quite happy with it. Now I'm just going to set this with the heat gun, because it doesn't actually need to go back in the oven because it's a really thin layer. And also I want to set up the heat gun before I do the other side. But you can see that there's quite a difference between each side. So here's the heat gun, and I'm just going to switch it on. It's going to make a little bit of noise. And then I'm just going to set this. So you're just going to hover over and move around. Just like this. Okay, and that should have set it. Let me just check. Okay, it needs to go a little bit longer. So I'll just carry on doing this until I'm happy with how set this is. There you go, so I've set it. So it's a little hot at the moment, but you can see it, this side looks much better compared to this side. So now I'm going to finish off this side, and I'm also going to do the same for each of these, and I'll set them when I have finished doing each separate one, and then I'll show you how to sand. Okay, so I finished up each of the sides. So you can see I can go along and feel that there aren't any more ridges, which is good. And I finished up these sides as well, and so now we're ready to sand. So I'll bring over a polishing paper, and this is 400 grit, and what we're going to do is we're just going to sand the entire piece again. Most of the top sanding has been done, but you do need to go and re-sand it. But I'm going to do the sides first, and this will get rid of the excess smear if there was any. And so you're going to sand both sides, and in here as well. You are also going to sand the top, and you're also going to sand the bottom. So you can expect to sand for at least half an hour. I'd probably be doing this for about an hour, just to make sure that I get it perfect. So I'll just be sanding from the 400 grit all the way up to the all up to an 8000 grit, and then I'll show you how to apply the Renaissance wax, and we'll finish it up. Okay, so I've finished sanding, so you can see the top's all nice and shiny again. I've left the inside a little bit matte because, well, I think it will look better because I don't want this shiny and taking away from the top. So the sides are shiny, the top's shiny, but the back is a little bit matte. But I have sanded it so it's nice and smooth inside here, so it's not going to hurt your arm. So now what we want to do is we want to apply the Renaissance wax. And here's what it looks like. Just opened it up, and I'll bring over an old polishing paper. I'm just folding it, and I'll dip that inside and get a little bit, and just pop the cap back on. Then I'll start buffing this Renaissance wax onto the cuff. And now it's best to use a electric buffer, but if you don't have one, a hand buff does do fairly well, as you can see. So I'm going to buff the top. I want to do the sides. And I also want to do the inside. Okay, and we'll put that aside to dry. Okay, and so here it is. And I have buffed it on my electric Dremel, so it will have a higher shine. So I definitely recommend getting an electric buffer because it works much better. But you can see how lovely and shiny that is. The Kato buffs up a lot better compared to the Primer. And then the inside's a little bit shiny as well, and the sides are nice and shiny as well. So that's good. Now you might notice that this bracelet is fairly small. I've made it so that it fits my wrist, which is pretty small. If you wanted to make it larger, you'd want to add more clay when you put the first layer on top of the bracelet blank, and then add less clay on the bottom. So let's say we had this, the top layer was on our thickest setting of the pasta machine, then we put over. So you would want to put that on. You would want to have a piece of clay that's twice the thickest setting of your pasta machine. Then you'd bake that on top of the cuff, take it off the cuff, and then the backing you would have on like the middle setting of your pasta machine rather than the thickest setting of the pasta machine. So depending on how much clay you add in the second bake, depends on how small your bracelet blank is. And you can also manipulate it a little bit. When you go for the second bake, you can warm it up in the oven a little bit, and then while it's warm you can gently, while it's warm, bring this open so that the opening over here is a little bit larger. But I didn't need it any larger, so I've kept it quite closed so it fits quite nicely. So that's basically it for this tutorial, and I do hope that it was helpful to you. And please do send in pictures of what you make using this tutorial. You can send it in through Facebook, through the website, and either way I'd love to see some photos. I always love seeing them. And as always, I hope to see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.